This is Roll Call for this edition of African Drums. The African drums are sounding.
Cuffy 250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the Afro-Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. I am Elsie and I will be your host for this evening's program. First, I'd like to apologize for the late start. Thank you, viewers, for still tuning in. Today is International Women's Day, a day when the world reflects in part on the condition of women. Cuffy 250 wishes to salute the women of Guyana and the rest of the world. In a world that is still characterized by male dominance, the status and condition of women still generates a lot of discussion and activism. So here we are, 15 years into the new millennium, seeking to address many of the same issues regarding gender equality that we addressed in the 20th century. This is not to say that there has not been any progress on that front. To the contrary, we have seen some significant advances in the overall condition of women. However, in the final analysis, women at all social levels and across ethnic lines still do not enjoy the same benefits as men. For us in Cuffy 250, this 21st century must be a time for leveling the ground so that our sisters, mothers, and daughters can be freed from the various vulnerabilities they endure purely because they are women. The struggle for ethnic, racial, and social justice would be incomplete if justice for women is not front and center. And so today, the African drum rolls loudly for our women. We dedicate our program to the women of the world, particularly the most oppressed among them. We also remember the many victims of violence: domestic violence, economic violence, political violence, and psychological violence. We salute the women and men who continue to make the liberation of these women their life's work. Finally, we dedicate our program to the memory of Dr. Faith Harding, who recently departed this world. We borrowed the words of the poet Martin Carter: too soon, our banner draped for you. With us on the program today are two able women whose public work reflect the best in our collective womanhood and who are no strangers to African drums. Cathy Hughes is a businesswoman and politician who is an executive member of the Alliance for Change. Nicole is a social worker and women's rights activist. Ladies, sisters, welcome to African Drums again.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you. Happy International Women's Day
And
to you too. Okay, so the first question that I want to ask both of you is, why is International Women's Day important? Nicole, you can begin.
I think it's important because women work. They work all the time, but they're hardly ever recognized for the work that they do. And let me give you a very good example. We have the civil rights movement that is ongoing in the USA, and they always talk about Dr. Martin Luther King. But seldom when the day comes up, everybody mentions Rosa Parks. It is Rosa Parks who was the spark, who refused to give that man a seat that sparked the civil rights movement. But yet, do we have a day in recognition of her? No, we don't. Okay, so this day is to recognize women for all their talents, their strengths, because at the end of the day, when the stories are told, it's men who are glorified. Little is known about the women who are behind the scenes doing all the hard work. So I think that this day is fitting for us, and I welcome it wholeheartedly.
I think Nicole put it really well, but it really is a day that allows us to stop and reflect on the position of women in our society, the challenges that they face, and of course, as you said in your very, very excellent introduction, to pause and look from where we've come and where we hope to go and what we still need to work very, very hard to achieve.
Okay. In this moment, I want you to reflect on your own lives as professional women, the struggles that you've overcome and how you've been able to break through gender barriers.
Well, for me, I am a survivor of gender-based violence. And 14 years ago, I would have made a decision that saved myself and son. I think it's the best decision that I would have made to end an abusive relationship in pursuit of my education. He didn't want me to go to school. The books on the bed became a fight between us. He kept asking me if that was my man. And eventually I had to make that wise decision. I have no regrets in making it. Through education, which is what is being promoted as girls' savior, as what will make women achieve more if they want to stop all the atrocities that are committed against them. They must pursue an education. We must remember that Malala, the Pakistani schoolgirl who was shot point blank in her head, and all she wants was to go to school, and she has a quote that says that I don't care if I have to sit on the floor in the classroom. All I want is an education, and I'm afraid of no one. So my determination to educate myself, because I recognize that in educating myself I'm being better able to educate my son, because as a parent you must lead. And so through education I've been able to achieve much. I just came off of a 7.5 year project with Global Fund. I worked for all those years at the Campbellville Health Center, and in 2009, of course, I was sworn in as a constitutional commissioner on the Women and Gender Equality Commission, and on that commission I was nominated to sit on the Rights of the Child Commission, where I sit on both commissions constitutionally. So I would say education is what made the difference, and I would promote education at the very highest for girls, because that is what will help in them breaking through barriers.
That's very, very true, and I compliment all the women like Nicole that have struggled with some form of violence. It's a real thing. I think, in fact, we were just looking at some UN statistics, and they said that 30% of women worldwide are in some form of gender-based violence, whether it is physical, emotional, sexual. It's a difficult situation to deal with. I am very, very fortunate that that has not been my experience. I was extremely fortunate that I grew up in a family where both my mother and my father and my aunts and uncles and everybody more or less said to you, you get a good education, you work hard, and you will do well. And therefore, most of the challenges that I have faced as a business person, as a businesswoman, and as in my field of work as a television producer, has been very, very minute on the scale of some of the challenges I know Nicole would have faced. I worked, for example, when I worked in the US, I used to do a lot of filming. I worked as a television producer and quite often had to use the camera and shoot and work as a cameraman. And I remember going to shoot a commercial in Texas, and this is real deep down in Texas, where you could imagine how redneck it was. And I had my assistant, who actually was working as, helping us to carry the equipment in the crew, but I was the main person in the crew. And I remember when I set up the camera and I was ready to start rolling and asked him the question and we were ready to go, he says to me, are you the camera person? I said, yes. He said, you sure you could do that? I'm not too sure that I want you to do this. Yeah. So that's the kind of sexual
because you're
biases.
a female, right?
I am female, and in Texas there weren't too many qualified black female camera women, and so I always remember that incident. I remember my very first job in Jamaica when I started working as a television producer with the Jamaica Information Service. And actually I was hired as a production assistant, and the television producer I was to work on left after about 2 months. So 6 months later, after doing her job, I went to my boss and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Gentles, but I'm actually doing the work of a television producer. Would you review my salary?"
Excellent
And
question.
yes, and he said to me, because I thought 6 months is more than enough time to show that I was doing a great job, you were complimenting me, I was getting more assignments. And he said to me, "Catherine, you're only 21 years old. What are you going to do with all that money?"
Oh, please.
You know, so again,
Oh, please.
in terms of the traditional stereotypes, A, that was an age thing. And again, the reality is that so many women are not paid the equal pay for the job they do that quite often a man could be doing and will get a totally different salary for.
Correct.
So those are, you know, some of my experiences, but as I say, I'm very fortunate in that respect. The way I look at it is, in my business experience, especially business in Guyana, I have seen very, very deliberate biases, especially in the banking field. And, you know, the opportunities to access financing. I mean, the terms and conditions that are applied to
Tough
women
it's tough.
are totally different, and it
Yeah.
is extremely tough. I was saying just a couple of months ago, I went to Citibank to get a loan for a business venture, and you know, I mean, I can't hide. I actually had a piece of land in my own name, and it still took like 3 months up, down, round, and my
Wow.
husband still had to approve me using my own collateral. So you could imagine, it's crazy, it's absolutely crazy. So you can imagine what happens to women that have great business ideas and
No
no
money to
collateral.
fund it. Yeah, to fund it.
In this day and age, you know, we really have not moved ahead to make opportunities for women a little more equal.
Okay.
So,
While we're on the topic of Guyana,
yeah.
we know that Guyana is consumed by ethnic and racial problems. Do you think that these problems work against us having a full-blown discussion on gender biases and inequality?
It can, because the African woman experience is totally different to the Indian woman experience, the Portuguese woman, what we call the European woman. It's totally different as to how she will, in her world, and what she will experience. Whether she will experience violence more, or whether the Indian woman experience violence more because of their cultural practices, or because we would have endured historically. When we look at violence, we cannot negate the fact that Guyana as a society has been founded and crafted on that violence. And we must talk here about the transatlantic slave trade, where the most heinous type of violence have been committed against women of African descent. That cannot be wished away. It shouldn't be wished away. It must be a part of every conversation that we have on violence. So if we want to look ethnically at the problem violence, we go all the way historically right back to the transatlantic slave trade, and you read some of those stories of what happened to women and how they were brutally raped and had their children taken away, the breeding of young African males to be used as studs. And some people think that they're still studying today, that they haven't really get within their cognitive mind that your role is to stay and raise the family, not just to impregnate and disappear. But that was the role on the plantation.
Okay, so you mentioned some of the challenges that women face in Guyana with your example of your situation at the bank. And you just mentioned some other challenges. What are other challenges that women face? We spoke earlier, before the show, about teenage pregnancy.
Yes.
Do you want to
highlight?
Yes.
Sure. And before we get there, I want to highlight a pervasive problem that affects women.
Sure.
Pregnancy and childbirth. I'm currently doing a course at Stanford University titled International Women's Health and Human Rights. It is a free course, and it's the third time it's being run by that university through Professor Anfert Murray. She is the author from Outrage to Courage. She is also the founder of the Global Fund for Women, which gives money to women's groups that focuses on education for women as an approach out. There is a film that was done by the World Health Organization in 1988 titled Why Did Mrs. X Die? Dr. Mahmoud Fatala, and it highlighted how too many women were dying in childbirth. This was in 1988. It is right back in the program in January of 2015, because the program started in January 2015. It will culminate in April. And these are just some stats. It says every 2 minutes, a woman dies from potentially avoidable or preventable problems in pregnancy or childbirth. That means 800 mothers a day. Nearly 300,000 mothers a year. Every minute, 6 newborn babies die from problems due to their mother's health. That's 8,500 babies a day, more than 3 million babies a year.
Wow.
Why did Mrs. X die? The hospital she went to, she was 8 months pregnant, but the hospital didn't have enough blood supply, so she hemorrhaged. In Guyana, we have had 18 mothers have died for 2014. Many from preventable causes, and 18 is too high for our small population. The problem of teenage pregnancy, let me give you some stats. For last year, the Georgetown Public Hospital reported 1,332 babies born to mothers between the ages of 12 to 19 years old. That in itself is too high. What we are seeing here is that for the girl child who gets pregnant, education becomes nullified for her. It's a struggle if she's going to ever get back into the classroom, and some do make it. Recently, I've met a young lady at a certain school that said to me that she got her baby last year, but she was able to return to school, and that's excellent.
Yeah, it's an exception though.
Correct. How many more mothers can we get like her? It's not many. So these babies who are born to these mothers, a 12-year-old. In 2012, I think we had a 10-year-old that gave birth at the Georgetown Public Hospital. At 10. So what it tells you that pedophilia is rife. That men having sex with children is so prevalent, because here you have the impregnating of these children. And in most cases, they don't come forward to own those babies. Those persons become single parents because of the age, because they know it's a crime. The age of so they would never come forward, because then they will be accosted and arrested, etc., etc. That we need to stop. Amnesty International recently flagged Guyana for its poor performance on women's rights, on addressing women's rights as human rights. And this is the reality. The Guyana Human Rights Association has done tremendously wonderful studies that highlight rape. We have a burgeoning rape culture, Elsie. In 2005, when I was a student at the University of Guyana, there was a study done called Without Convictions by the Guyana Human Rights Association, and it highlighted that rape had a mere 1% conviction rate in the courts. That document is what led to the crafting of the Sexual Offences Act of 2010. The research that body kept doing, kudos to the Guyana Human Rights Association. They have kept the issue of rape in highlight. They've kept it, they haven't damped it, but this is what has happened. And you tell me, where's the progress? In 2015, we have Amnesty reporting on the 22 rapes that occurred between 2012-2013 that ended in no convictions. So we've moved from low, to mere 1%, to no. That in itself is a huge indictment upon whatever you're trying to do. And you say, oh, we have robust legislation, we have the most progressive laws, but then what use do you have good laws and it doesn't work? It's like having a dog and people come to attack you, and then that dog just throw back and waggles the tail and say.
But you know, Nicole, on the rape issue, you talked about low convictions and no convictions. But even the step before that, because I'm currently dealing with a very horrific situation that was publicized where a 14-year-old was actually raped by 4 men. And unfortunately, there hasn't even been a charge leveled. There has not even been a charge leveled. Unfortunately, immediately after the incident, she was taken to the police station. In subsequent hours, there was a lineup. The victim, unfortunately, could not speak, which one can understand.
Because of the
after
trauma.
that situation, she's still struggling with the trauma. But the first 48 hours, she could not utter a word. You could imagine the trauma that she's going through and her entire family. She was unable to identify the perpetrator with her voice, but indicated that that was the person.
Actions,
yes.
Right.
Her 12-year-old sister, the 2 of the 4 rapists also attempted to. Thank God did not succeed. The 12-year-old was able to verbally identify the 2 individuals.
Okay, she was a witness.
She was a witness. The 2 individuals have been charged with break and enter.
Break and enter.
Break and enter. Because in part, as they actually entered the home, stole a series of different things, and then perpetrated this heinous crime.
So the rape was never addressed?
Right up to now. And that is since November
of 2014?
Of 2014, because we're in 2015 now, to now. One of the tasks I have next week is to push that issue, which means, you know, as far as the information the mother shared with me on Friday afternoon was that the file came back from the DPP's office, and that the DPP's recommendation was that there was insufficient evidence because the child did not identify and speak.
So how do we move from that?
So that's
as
exactly.
a nation,
can you imagine that?
How do we move from that?
How could we be so insensitive that we could not understand? How could you expect a 14-year-old that has gone through that trauma to be able to act normally and to be able to speak? Isn't that unacceptable?
It is unacceptable.
Totally unacceptable.
Because we have a young man who still is not speaking. His gang rape would have occurred.
Yes.
I think 31st of December into January 1st.
Yes.
This year. And it's mind-boggling.
It is.
And it's painful. Extremely painful.
There's a lot of work to be done.
Because through the rape, what happens to women, sexually transmitted infections. I think it was reported recently that a policeman, it is alleged, transmitted some form of STD to a young female who he would have raped. This is where post-exposure prophylaxis become critical. PEP. Did the young lady, was she offered PEP? PEP is a treatment regimen that prevents the transmission of HIV and AIDS.
Yeah.
And every police station should know about that. Every police station. We have this comical issue of who is responsible for the procurement of rape kits.
Yeah.
So you ask the Ministry of Home Affairs who is responsible. It was anybody plays Shaggy, yeah?
Yeah.
Shaggy comes into play. It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
It's true.
So you ask the Ministry of Health, they say too it wasn't me. So who is responsible for the procurement of rape kits?
Yeah.
So that we can have because rape kits are vital. That forensic laboratory is integral if we are going to arrest Guyana's burgeoning rape culture.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think these are some of the issues that we'd have to talk about when we discuss solutions to some of the problems that we face. That the legislation is just black and white, and they look at this issue and they don't consider the psychological and health issues that are going to come from that.
Sure.
Rape is a violent act, and there has been a noticeable upsurge of violence against women, especially in Guyana. What do you think accounts for this?
I think part of it is economic. I think it's the frustrations of the society. I think it is an environment that suggests that, you know, women are, I want to use the word property, but I don't want to attribute that kind of thinking to all men, because I'm not saying that. But definitely I think that part of the problem is that many women are unable to find, there are insufficient jobs for women. And when we say jobs, we mean employment opportunities that meet the needs of a woman. Recently, in the last, I would say, I think it's in the last 8 to 10 years, there's been an upsurge of women being able to find jobs in the security services. The reality is a lot of those jobs are taking them away. It's shift work, and most of them are on shift from 7 in the night to 7 the next morning. So you can imagine that in a society with a high incidence of female-headed single-parent households, you have a mother that is going off to work as a security guard. You have a big sister or a cousin or an aunt, or quite often a younger teenager, that is required to ensure that the children, the younger siblings, do the homework, get to bed on time, and all those other responsibilities. And you know, unfortunately, we have so many incidences where, as Nicole was saying, the importance of education then starts to fall behind.
Yes.
You know, she's coming in at 7 o'clock just as the kids are going out to school. It's a cycle. She's tired. She's working just to put the food on, something in the lunch kit. The reality is some days she has no transportation money for all of them to go to school. All these are real things. All of us know of families where a woman will decide, unfortunately, well, this one doing better at school, so this one gonna go to school 5 days a week, because she ain't got money for everybody to go to school the 5 days. And the one that might be falling behind maybe goes 4 days or 3 days.
Yeah.
So we have to change the whole culture of the kinds of jobs that we make that are available for women. We keep saying that the women are the most precious resources. We know that they are the ones that hold the family and by extension this country together, but yet very little is done for them. When you look at the situation in terms of daycare facilities at offices, I mean, if you have a small child, you either got to put them in daycare unless you got a family that can look after them. Right? Everybody today hustling.
Yes.
So you have to find additional money for daycare. You have to leave work at a certain hour to run and pick them up. When are we going to start to look at employment opportunities that facilitate companies, for example, especially the larger companies, making daycare facilities available, just like they would a health scheme or what other thing? What would it cost for a big company to have a room, and from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 5 o'clock you have somebody there, and the kids can come and do their homework, and all the women, when you think about it, you have more productivity, because instead of a woman having to work out if she dashing out to pick up the child and carry home, or stressing that the partner didn't pick the child up yet, or all the other challenges that are real that we all know about. You know, those are the small things that we need to start doing. Employment that is thought of not just as having to go to a physical space at 8:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning and come home at 4 o'clock. There are other parts in the world where they've very, very successfully created an environment where companies can have people work at home and you still be measured. Exactly, which allows a woman to do both roles. It is not giving her, I mean, things like that in Guyana tend to be looked at as, oh Lord, that can't happen here.
Yeah, we're not that empathetic.
Exactly.
What we are is more apathetic.
Yes.
And what you find happening here, and if you can remember with my advocacy, I've called for the striking out of the wandering law. Here is why. There's a real issue that Cathy touched on. The security guard. The security guard who goes to work 12 to 16 hours. And the child wonders.
Yeah.
Because she's not there.
Yeah.
Here comes the state. How cruel is this?
Yeah.
Picks up the child.
And carry them to.
The child even got access to an attorney. Passed the child through court. And you know at age 10 they're doing that, right? They're charging children here. Yes, have you ever visited? You need to visit the New Opportunity Court to see what goes on there. So at age 10, the mother comes home now thinking of the child in the house.
And
Here how the child already in Essequibo. What type of system does that?
Yeah.
That wandering has been on the books in slavery. You see me touch on slavery? They got some things there from slavery that was meant specifically for colored people, you know. All right? So you need to look at that. So now she's out there. She's left alone. She's raising the child. Damn if she do, damn if she doesn't. She's out there. She's looking for $1. But when she gets home, the system. So instead of the system picking them up to send them to wandering, why can't we have community centers whereby the children can go
and do their homework? Somebody helping them with the homework.
I have a colleague in London who's advocating for night care, all because we recognize women in the security forces, and they're there, and they're getting pregnant, they are mothers. So what are we doing for them? And in Guyana, it's women who run the security sector. You look at it. It's women.
Okay, let's talk about another type of violence against women, sort of cultural violence, where women's bodies are promoted as sex symbols and are promoted as forms of entertainment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the objectification of women as sex objects from if you're going to sell moccasin,
everything.
If you're going to sell a light bulb, if you're going to sell a car, you see a car, you see this woman walking in some heels, you ever see a car, and she's stepping on the heels, and
it's every part of the world, so that's part of it.
So
it's not how the car drives or the engine.
She is not dressed like me nor Cathy.
No.
This is real modest dressing.
Old-fashioned, man.
Right? She is dressed really provocative, you know? So it's all about using her body to get for marketing, because as there's a slogan that says what? Sex sells. Right? So they've been doing that. Cigarettes, they're on everything. I don't think they put... Where don't we find women marketing anything? Their bodies are used to market anything. From whatever they choose to do, they're going to put a female body there.
How do we address that?
Well,
again, I think through education.
Through education, because for women themselves, they have got to have a certain amount of self-esteem, right? Because the system is there, you have laws. You have cases whereby, myself, you've gone to court, you've gone to the hospital, you've gone all over with the woman. And when the time comes for there to be social action taken to mitigate her situation, she begs for that man. Yes, you have those cases too. So we must be honest there. Alright, so you may ask, so what makes the woman do that? Well, there's something called the battered woman syndrome, and that we need to understand. It's a huge psychological phenomenon. You try to help, you are seeing her danger, but she doesn't see it. Can't remember the woman who was hammered in her head, came out of hospital with all the bandage and tell us in the papers that the man didn't hammer her. Can you remember that story a couple of years back? So we have those instances of whereby the woman will try to hold on to her perpetrator.
And some of it is economic too.
It is all in the interest of economics. Because in her world, she has been taught. She has been taught to depend. Through education, however, that dependency is kind of diminished. Where she can become is interdependent, because we do need men. We can't throw them out altogether. They are part of who we are, and so we need them. But what we need to have women understand is that if you are being harmed, it is not good for you to stay and say, oh, I'm staying because I need to protect my children. You're harming the children more. The WHO would have shown stats where children who would have grown up in such violent homes grow up to become perpetrators themselves. And in Guyana, we have lots of that going on. Children who walked in and seen
the father kill the mother,
seen blood, they have witnessed it. There's a woman who got stabbed up, I think, is in Region 3, the 40, I think the child, 11-year-old, I think she's the one who loosed out herself. I think she was tied up, and it's she who actually alerted persons that her mother. So we've had children in Guyana who witnessed some terrible atrocities, and that will affect them psychologically.
Again, Nicole made an interesting point in the reference to education. And that's one of the challenges and disappointments I see in our media today. That really in other countries there is a concerted attempt to assist the education process. Through public service announcements, there are all kinds of messages that run in some societies all the time. Giving women the confidence, kind of trying to explain, educating them
Yes.
on a course of action that they could take. And quite often there are sufficient support facilities that they can go to. It's no good if a woman is in a situation of abuse to say to her, okay, you can come, if you need to leave, you could leave, but you don't offer provision or a space where she can come to with her children, because she's not going to leave and leave the children behind.
No.
So she needs an opportunity to leave with her children, and she needs to be going somewhere where you're not going to say to her, well, we can only accommodate you for a week or 2 weeks. You know, she's going to need support.
Because that happens in some places that offer refuge.
Well, that's
You have a time
why I'm
limit.
saying that.
You have a
That's
time limit.
specifically why I'm saying that.
Yes.
You cannot be
It's not
offering
sustainable.
refuge and you're saying to her, well, come for a week. Because she knows that under those circumstances, she's going to have to go right back home to the abuse. And therefore, quite often, leaving is not an option. It is economically and financially not an option. And that's why we have to start creating facilities that will allow a woman and her family to leave for as long as is necessary. Let's say anywhere from 1 day to 6 months. And it has to be a center where there are counseling facilities,
Yes.
where there's someone that is earmarked to help her find a job,
Yes.
that will look at her skills,
Yes.
help with retraining her,
Correct.
or go out to a couple employers and say, look, please, you remember long ago they used to do a bit of this.
Yes.
You would go to an employer and say, look, I've got an excellent woman, she's got a problem right now, but she could use the computer, she could do whatever, and you try and assist by putting her in a position of employment. Then you can say that you have truly helped and changed that individual.
Correct.
Because you've given her the means to
For her.
financially
That
look
is real
after
empowerment.
herself. But, you know, in a very simple way, public service announcements, messages on television are just basic things, and more facilities are things that we can do starting tomorrow. We spend so much money on all kinds of other nonsense. We got companies. I don't want to get into the politics
Yes.
of it, but we have companies that come here that run off with $6 million and $4 million, and we can't find them and we can't charge them. Why isn't that money put into real
Tangible
that-
things to help
tangible
women.
things, exactly.
If
you
if
say
as you
it so.
claim women are
Yep.
priority, and here's where Justice Roxanne George would have been championing.
Excellent.
She
person.
has said that if we are going to even begin to address violence against women, we need to have a response that is akin to the HIV response. So she's talking about money.
Yes.
Because with HIV,
Endless
every
money.
facet has been funded.
Yep.
Last year, Justice George, in her speech at an International Women's Day event organized by the Women and Gender Equality Commission, spoke about low-income apartments
Yeah.
being made available. So
yes.
here's Cathy talking about facilities.
Same
She's
kind of
saying that women who want to get out, they need to have somewhere to go.
Exactly.
I'll bring you into my case. If it wasn't for Dr. Bernadette Cole-Slaughter, the retired dean for State University, New York, I might have been a stats. She opened her home, and the rest is history, and that intervention lasted almost 8 years.
Wow. You see? Yeah, but
I had a
that's what it
shelter.
takes. But
I was
look,
able. I,
but look
I,
at
I
her
was
now.
able to go back
But
to
look at
school,
you now.
and she is back now in my life,
Wonderful.
helping me at Stanford University, and wants me to move on and to do other things.
Yeah.
All right. So look at her intervention,
Mhm.
and mind you, I used the 1996 Domestic Violence Act. It's a toothless putty.
Mhm.
It just doesn't work. What worked for me is my family system,
Mhm.
but not many
And
women
support,
have that support.
Yeah.
Not many women have it, so we have got to make the system of support that the state is obligated to do,
Yeah.
because they're obligated.
Yeah.
The state is obligated to address violence against women, and they must do it through economics. I can remember vividly as a survivor lobbying President Ramatar when we went to meet him as a commission for a survivors fund. We have women who have survived who don't have any hands.
Yeah.
They can't, at least, God bless me, I still have. I have scars, but at least I can still go to school, I can write. You have women who need to have that.
Yeah.
I lobbied for a survivors fund for survivors of gender-based violence, and recognizing that if you are serious about addressing it, put your money where your mouth is.
Yes.
Straight on the issue of the state and the government, do you think that the government and also political parties have placed enough emphasis on women's issues?
I would look at it a different way. I think quite a few political parties have. I can speak for my own.
Sure.
I think that we have. The challenge we have is that we don't have the resources. So sometimes I get frustrated because it seems as though we're talking and talking, and we're lobbying, we're supporting, but at the end of the day, we can't make the decision to write that check.
We need the money.
That is the problem.
Okay, so
That is the problem.
So as a member of AFC, what plans does this particular party have in place to deal with
Well,
these issues?
in some of the points that I've raised, and my specific example of a facility that provides accommodation and the support I described, that comes straight out of our planning and our construct. Because what we've done, especially in the last 2 months, is that we've looked at a range of these issues. And our position has been, look, if we are given the opportunity, what is it that we're going to put in place immediately? And the things that I've mentioned have come from that.
Shelter.
That's exactly where it's come from, the
shelter.
shelter and the employment opportunities. And also, as I mentioned to you, the credits. The tax credits for companies to get more people on board with providing daycare and support facilities. The shelter, I don't really want to call it a shelter because it's a living arrangement that brings with it counseling, psychological counseling, financial support, education, employment searches for the individual. So it really is a comprehensive,
therapeutic.
Exactly. It's extremely comprehensive. So those are the kinds of things that we have already put down on paper that we feel need to start.
Okay. Nicole, tell us about the body that you work with in Guyana.
The Women and Gender Equality Commission, they have been, we've been doing work looking at addressing gender-based violence. So much so that we have come back, 2 commissioners would have traveled to Jamaica and returned with the model that is over this called SISOCA. It's a Center for Investigating Sexual Offenses, and it's holistic, just as Cathy would have mentioned, the services that would have been offered. We would have met with the Minister of Human Services in putting forward the idea, and again, everything gets stuck at funding. So when are we going to really value women and put the money that is needed to ensure that she has all these resources? Because it's window dressing, it's a lot of hot air for you to tell me all what you've done. Wonderful legislation. I want to see social action. And in 2015, we are in the post-Beijing period, you know, it's 20 years since Beijing.
Wow.
The Beijing Platform for Action has many ambitious plans for women, and we need social action. So in 2015, it's about action. Where are the facilities? You tell me. So we have incidences here, which I will now term 50 shades of rape. Because you have a commander who will report to you, oh, we have increased rapes, and in the same breath he doesn't tell you how many convictions you have. Rubbish. I don't want to hear about your increased reporting rape without you telling me
what you've done.
What have you done to reduce it, because that's why you're being paid. So you have persons who are comfortable collecting monies, their tummies are burgeoning, you know, they're just sitting down, they're getting fatter and fatter, they're doing nothing really. There's no action. So Guyana needs social action. That's the only way it will go. Today marks 1 year since Citizens Against Rape March. Remember that march? Children led that march last year on International Women's Day. It was a Saturday morning. And we marched, Guyana's first anti-rape march, to call attention that this is a real problem.
It is.
In 2012, the youngest female, we need a law in her name, you know. I can't remember her name. She's from Haslington, who got sodomized to death.
Oh, God.
Who even remembers her?
Oh,
she
God.
is the youngest female to face death through violence, sexual violence. Okay? So we need to have action. We are tired of the talk. You're telling us all the time how we're priority and you love us and you care for us. So where's the money?
Yeah. But we will put $56 million into a hotel.
Oh,
But we
God.
wouldn't put that into. Think about it in those terms.
God.
Can you imagine this kind of a facility we could have built? We could have built in Berbice, in Essequibo, in Georgetown. In every region
we could have
put
had
one place.
Sissoko.
But that is exactly
with the money.
Exactly. But that's the thing. The decisions. It's not that we can't do it. One of the things I detest is this suggestion that Guyana is a poor country.
Oh.
We have loads of resources. That budget, when you sit in Parliament and you see the size of that budget, then you realize that the terrible thing is the choices that people in power make as to how that money is going to be spent.
And this
Right?
is why we need more women
Absolutely.
at the table.
Absolutely.
We need more women at the table.
Yep. To
So
say.
that, to say that,
Yep.
look, we need to see this happen. And what the slogans for International Women's Day is make it happen.
Yeah.
Make it happen. Step it up.
Yeah.
Step it up is actually the slogan that speaks to women being involved in peace building negotiations. According to Resolution 1325 of the United Nations Charter, calls for women to be involved in peace process. So across the world where you have potential conflicts, you must have women involved. Resolution 1820 speaks to recognizing rape as a crime and to punish it.
Okay, while we're on the issue of having more women at the table,
At the table.
both of you would have known Dr. Faith Harding.
Yes.
Can you speak about her work in the empowerment of women?
Education. She championed and supported that, and small businesses. You know, she was actually doing her quick impact program that helped to empower, put women to work, have them reap their farm, their produce,
The sorrel.
and market it. Yes,
Remember the sorrel project?
excellent work. So she never stopped. In whatever she does, she speaks about education being that vehicle
Yes.
of change for women. So girls must be going to school. Girls must learn. In America, Obama speaks about STEM for girls: science, technology, engineering, and maths. The area where girls need to go: science,
yeah.
technology,
The
engineering, and maths.
non-traditional.
And I'm now thinking of a 10-year-old who's at UK University doing mathematics. She's doing a degree at age 10.
Wow.
Yes. So science, technology, engineering, and math for girls. So education, that's where Dr. Faith Harding would have stood out for me. In meeting her and whenever we interacted, there are some cases that she would have dealt with whilst I was at the Campbellfield Health Center. Cases that involved child sexual abuse with parents and their children, and I would have called upon her, and she never stopped to stress how important that was in alleviating the conditions that women face. You can't cut it two ways. The education is the surest route for that girl child, but if she's in a culture that doesn't promote girls' education, we're in trouble.
That's right. And that's part of the issue we have today. I remember one of the last in-depth meetings I had with Faith was at her home, and it was with Simona Brooms from the Guyana Women Miners
Association.
And we haven't really talked about trafficking in persons, which is a whole other area that we are facing serious problems with in Guyana. Don't let anyone say it's not real.
It is real.
It's absolutely real. And I remember that was an area that people may not know she was very concerned about. And I remember sitting with her and Simona for about a 2-hour meeting, and we were talking about, things that we could do getting police women themselves more involved and more concerned.
Yes.
Because when you think about it too, you know, the police women are a whole resource of women that we need, I think, to
Tap
into and empower them. They're the ones that are at the police stations. They're the ones that also see these rape victims as they come in. And quite often, you know, the kinds of support that they can provide is not happening, you know, and we need the support of our police women to be able to speak out and to take that as an extra responsibility, you know.
And speaking about the police, let us not forget that it was a former police who was charged with trafficking of the 14-year-old. You saw it, you saw it, it made the news, you saw that, right? He got convicted for trafficking. It's a real problem.
And others that have been charged for rape.
Yes.
At the highest levels.
Oh my goodness. So we're looking at a situation that will call for strategic action. We need all the security experts on board. I would have called last year, October, for a special victims unit. I heard there's a sexual crimes unit. My reason for calling for this is because of the spate of rapes. Now for this year, the elderly women, we haven't touched on them. You could imagine, I'm at 73. I decide since I'm 40 that I don't want a man again in my life. And I at 73 have a man break in. And rape me. And then kill me
and walk away.
At 73. So we have, you can imagine our elderly women don't have, they can't be safe in their society. And now they didn't dress anywhere provocative. They're in their homes. Perhaps watching at listening to the radio or watching at something, and you murder them.
It is sick.
It is sick. Or I think 4 elderly would have been murdered and raped and killed for this year.
So you can't even say that it's a one-off and it might have been some crazed person. To think that this is happening more and more now. And that's how these trends start.
Yes. I'm scared for them. So my message to families is if you have elderly women living alone, somebody please
bring
check
them
on
into
them.
your house.
You need to be there with them because they are easy targets. Something has gone amok in this country.
So I think you were asking, Elsie, about the way, part of the challenge is the way we view women in our society. And we have had individuals at the highest level that when you listen to what they say about women, you recognize that across the spectrum of our country, little regard and insufficient respect is given to women. Because I cannot imagine that person that would have raped and battered and killed a 73-year-old woman had to have a mother, had to have a grandmother. I mean, long ago, just on the basis of respect. It wouldn't even cross your mind.
No.
It would not even cross your mind. So, unfortunately, when you look at trafficking in persons, the amount of stories we keep hearing about women who, again, are leaving the security of their home environment and are venturing out to mining camps and interior locations.
Economics.
Because they know they need some money, and they say, you hear in all these stories, they were going to work for 3 months to get the money to come back home. It is something that they felt they had to do to support their families. And they go out there, and the job is not what they want. They report to the police in the hinterland, and the police don't bring them back. They have to hope Simona can find them and bring them back. That is the reality of what's happening.
And then we have the case whereby of the mother who going to report the rape of her 4-year-old daughter and the police inaction. Do you remember recently?
Yes. Oh God.
Starbuck News just highlighted it in a wonderful article called Make It Happen.
Oh God.
In looking at the theme for International Women's Day. The woman, she has run so much and she's so frustrated. Her 4-year-old daughter, she's saying that, look, perhaps with all this time it has taken, it gives the perpetrator time to escape. Without convictions, without redressing, without seeing anything done to people who harm others, you will have and increasing it, and that's what we're seeing.
Okay, so throughout the program, we've identified that this issue is a public health issue.
Yes,
it's an economic
Violence
issue.
against women is a
issue
public
at the
health
legislative level, at every
level. It affects.
Okay, so I want to thank you, Nicole Cole and Cathy Hughes, for being on African Drums. We are out of time right now.
Oh my goodness.
Our pleasure.
The time has gone already.
Yes.
Yes, and I also want to thank you, both of you, for the significant contributions that you have made to empowering women in our society.
Well, thank you very much. One more positive note. The 25th day of every month is called Orange Day. It is deemed Orange Day by UN Women because it is a day dedicated to highlighting violence against women and ending it. So every 25th day of every month you can do something to call attention to it. It says to orange your world, orange your space, orange is the color for that.
Viewers, thank you for staying with us, and the challenge goes out to you on the 25th of every month.
Yes.
Take the challenge, wear something orange, and in addition to that, do something that will impact a woman's life in a positive way. Thank you for staying with us. This has been African Drums, the television organ of the Cuffy 250 Committee, an organization dedicated to the empowerment of the African Guyanese community through education and the encouragement of self-activity. Please please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Cuffy 250. Please also send us an email at cuffy250gy@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Please also donate to the cause. Thank you for staying with us. I am Elsie Harry. Please join us next time, and happy International Women's Day.